Of course, it took me a week to crawl this far. I thought I was a goner. Said to myself, Nick, old son, find yourself a nice, comfortable spot and lay down and die.
Weren't you afraid?
Dying? Nah. I read the Bible once. You know, God and Jesus and all them apostles. Well, they were all fishermen, just like me. Yeah, straight to heaven for Mick Dundee. Yep. Me and God. We'd be mates.
Well, the night is young and the road is long. There's a hanging moon. You and me, we got 1,000 songs. Now the city lights are a distant glow, and the only thing we gotta do is go. So keep.
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 4 of the Predator podcast. My name is Dean Watt. It's good to have you back. This week I've managed to score an interview with the legendary Neville Fickling. A lot of you would know Nev from his UK Pike record from back in the day. He's also the editor of Pike and Predators magazine, along with a tackle shop owner, a bait salesman and a fishery owner. And truth be told, he's not a bad bloke either. And I reckon it's a pretty good episode. I hope you do too. If you want to get in touch with me, you can get me on Facebook, Instagram. You can go to predatorpodcast.com. We've even got a YouTube channel, so there's plenty of ways to get in touch. Also, for the last episode, I had a Guess That Clip competition. There was a few people who got the right answer of A River Runs Through It, and I've drawn a name out of the hat. The winner is Dave Griffith. So get in touch with me, Dave, and I'll send you a handful of lures. Apart from that, crack open a beer, cast the rods out, do whatever you got to do, and I'll see you at the other end. Cheers, guys.
Keep on riding. 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 That you're by my side. I'll tell you that you're by my side. Keep on riding. Tell me that you're by my side. I'll tell you that you're by my side. Keep on riding. Tell me that you're by my side. I'll tell you that you're by my side.
G'day everyone and welcome to the 4th episode of the Predator podcast. This time I have a guest who, to most of you, will need no introduction at all. He's seen his fair share of massive predators and even penned a few books on the very subject. Neville, well, how are you, mate, now that the bad weather's got out of the way? Is it nice down your way?
No, we've come into the shop because it hasn't got any heating other than a little epoxy heater in the corner, and it takes half a day to warm up properly, and my feet are finally warmed up.
Oh, right. Well, the sun's out up here in Fife.
The idea of going fishing in it at the moment doesn't appeal to me in the slightest.
We've established one thing through this podcast is that fishermen are absolutely rubbish at trying to figure out how to use Skype.
Well, no, it's not me. I never touched it. It's my very capable manager that couldn't do it. So I shove all the blame on her.
So, mate, for anyone out there who doesn't know who you are, how about give us a bit of a rundown on who you are and what it is that you do?
I'm Neville Fickling, who's spent most of my 63 years in the misguided pursuit of fish, and I'm still wondering why I'm doing it, because basically all I spend my time doing is catching something cold and wet and slimy and then chucking it back in the water. And I am a sensible person, and I should know that this is not a very sensible occupation, but I seem to enjoy it. So that's why I carry on doing it. I'm sort of hooked on it now.
Well, that's right. You've managed to carve quite a life and quite a career out of it. And I was actually passed on to you by a good mate of the podcast, Mr. Al Rawlings. And obviously, as you know, he's recently got...
Never heard of him.
He's recently got to the 520-pound pike mark.
It's all lies. It's all lies.
Sounds like you know him well then. What's your connection with Al?
What's my connection? Hopefully it'll be a large piece of wood when I meet him. I'm just trying to think where I bumped into him first. I probably bumped into him possibly on Loch somewhere or other in Ireland. I mustn't mention names because otherwise I'll get shot. I've certainly known him for 15, 16 years at least.
Okay.
Then he was a nobody, which suits me because I prefer fishing with nobodies. And but now he's a bit of a somebody, so he's a pain in the neck now. So he beat me to 520s, which is not fair because I should have got there first. But I tried everything. I tried
Dynamite.
process of extermination. That was one plan. Sabotaging his boat, drilling holes in it. I tried all sorts of ideas, but I never got around to doing it, unfortunately.
Well, I saw you gave him a spot in the magazine, though, so you're a nice enough guy.
We do anything to fill a space.
I'm surprised you didn't black out his ugly mug.
I think I did do that, but they countermanded my orders. But no, you got to have a laugh about most things in fishing because it is a bit of a mad pursuit. But he's I like Al. He's got some funny ideas sometimes. But what you do is you don't start discussing them with him because I'm a scientist by training, and I don't believe in the paranormal. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in little green men. I don't believe in idiots that believe that there's been no moon landing. All conspiracy theories I don't believe in unless there's some proof. And Al and his moon theories and things like that. Well, I say to him constantly, give me one reason why an animal should find it advantageous to follow phases of the moon, and then he'll give me a long explanation, and then I'll say, well, I don't think that's right. And in the end, we try and talk about other things because we just go around in circles.
Well, Pike are even probably more mysterious than talking about women, I'd reckon.
Well, I don't get to talk about women because I'm married and I'm not allowed to.
Right. Well, Al was saying, I think you were over there recently fishing with him. Is that right?
Yeah, we had a fantastic day going round in circles on a loch and catching naffle.
Right. Did he have a theory about that? About why you're catching nothing?
It was an off day, but I could have told him that.
Yeah, right.
I then asked him why it was an off day, and he didn't come up with a totally satisfactory explanation. But since I can't remember what he said, I'm not going to be unfair to him and say he was wrong because I can't remember what the answer to the question was.
Well, since you've caught nearly 1,000 20-pounders between you, how different does his technique seem to yours?
He's got a lot more into lure fishing of late, whereas my lure fishing remains a steady 5 to 10% of my fishing effort. Because I'm based in England,
Okay.
Most of my fishing is dead baits, a little bit live bait, and the lure fishing fluctuates between hardly any to quite a bit at times. But as a general thing, lure fishing is probably about 10% of the effort that I put in.
Right.
But Al, at certain times now, is perhaps getting close to 40%, I would say, of his efforts lure fishing.
Yeah, it seems that way. And do you do as much trolling as Al with the lures, do you think, or are you just more of a cast and have a bit of fun kind of guy?
I'm not a very keen person on casting because it bores the tears out of me doing it all day. Trolling is fine. A lot of people say it's an idiot's method, it's a lazy method. Actually, just like anything else in pike fishing, to do it effectively, you've got to have your wits about you to some extent. And I like trolling. I'm perfectly happy doing it. I haven't had anything huge this season doing it. I've had a couple of 24s, which I think's okay. Al was trolling on the water that I was fishing about 10 days ago. My boat trailer, the brake drums are seized on one of the axles, and though you could drive around on three wheels, I decided not to travel any distance. So I went and fished off the bank, and I know a few spots on a few places that he doesn't know, right? And I lobbed a dead bait into this spot that last produced fish in 1996. Shows you how good it is. And I just turned around to get my chair, and it was away, and that was 20 1/4 pound. That was on the dead bait. Now the problem is that trolling is a very effective method. You go past a lot of fish that don't take the lure, right? There's no way of being sure of that, except that some of the camera footage that's been done by the people with the Savage Gear water wolf camera shows that you get more interest than you actually get fish. Well, with a dead bait, I'm a firm believer that if you drop a bait within 100 yards of a pike on a lot of Irish waters anyway, odds on it's going to take it. But the problem is getting within 100 yards of a pike in 22,000 acres of water. The odds are not good.
What if you really stretch your imagination and start trolling a deadbait like, say, the big game fishermen do, or those new sort of lure heads allow you to troll a deadbait?
I don't think it's good enough because, trolling's a visual method. The pike see or hear it coming, right?
A reaction strike.
And I shouldn't think there's much involved in smell, whereas a dead bait chucked out, within minutes of it hitting the water, there's going to be a scent trail. And it's that, I think, that suddenly a pike smells, what's that? That smells interesting. And it immediately goes to investigate, because anything that lives on other fish, that's what they do. Any sign of life somewhere or any form of food, they go have a look. And smell is a good means of finding something.
So instead of attack mode, say as a lure goes whizzing past, it's feeding mode.
Yeah, it's just it's going to be sitting there in the water, minding its own business, waiting for something interesting to happen. And there isn't, in this case, a fish swimming past it, and it isn't a lure going past it. What it is suddenly it's a smell, and he can't see the fish, but he can smell the fish. And the animals at this lower level, and I say that not to be derisive about a fish, but the fact is that it is a lower vertebrate, less advanced than a frog, far less advanced than a reptile, miles less advanced than the bird, and vastly less advanced than the mammal. But its basic instinctive behaviour is what governs it, and if it smells something, it investigates it, unless it's completely stuffed full of food and doesn't have any desire to feed at all.
Yeah, that's right. The longer a deadbait sits in front of his nose, you could see him start to dribble and drool all over the place, especially on some of that video camera footage.
Yeah, I think I won't be able to pronounce this because I'm terrible at pronouncing it, but you're trying to anthropomorphise this, but I understand what you say.
Well, in terms of trolling versus casting, what do you think is a better method for targeting those big pike? Obviously, Al does it trolling.
I think if you know where they are, casting is a very good method. I fished one reservoir in England where the spots are so well defined. You mark them on your GPS, and it becomes a joke because every take or follow is in that area. You go outside that area to experiment to see if there's something outside the area, and there never is. They're always in that same area. So there is no point in trolling if you're allowed to troll, which you aren't on that particular water. There's no point in trolling because you'd actually only be in the killing area for about 3 minutes. So obviously casting with a drogue is what you do in that situation. And you're basically making the assumption that there's perhaps 10, 20 or even 30 pike in that area, hardly any of which are going to take first time. But each time you do the drift, you cover in a slightly different angle, slightly different direction of drift, a slightly different drift altogether. And slowly but surely, you put a lure past the fish that eventually decides, oh, I am going to have a go this time.
So if you can identify a hotspot, instead of trolling over it, say with 2 lines out, you can do one drift and essentially cover the same amount of water as 5 or 6 trolls.
Yeah, but you keep doing it again and again and again. But you always fish outside the area because you can't. If you become too stereotyped in your approach, and something changes the week after, and the week or a month after that, you'll end up missing out. So you always expand your search area, but once, say, by the middle of the day, you found that it's the same old story and they're still in the same area, then you narrow your drift down to be covering it nearly all the time.
God, we're overflowing with pike info and we're only 15 minutes in.
One of the other things that I've learned over the years is that the best pike anglers of all aren't necessarily intellectuals. They haven't got degrees, or they aren't in highly professional jobs. A lot of the really good pike anglers are just ordinary people. But what they do have is they have the ability to see the blatantly obvious, right? And this is a common problem when you're pike fishing, is when you're trying to see more into it than what there is, right? Yeah, you're overanalyzing it, whereas the basic thing is that if the pike live under that tree on that river, then that's where you fish. You don't go and fish anywhere else, not until you've caught whatever under that tree. And a lot of people see waters in that way. They see the most obvious things straight away, which is a very sensible thing to do. And one of the things that I do sometimes is I do the very thing that I've just told you shouldn't do. And you've got to get yourself back to the obvious things, because some people can read waters so well that they can read the obvious and they can also read the slightly not as obvious. And that's perhaps more of a skill in a pike angler than reading the obvious. It's just it's what gives some people that little bit of an edge. And I have a friend who fishes on our local river, and he seems to be able to figure out spots for static fishing on the river in the boat, dead bait, far easier than what I do. And I can't understand how he's doing it, you know. And I'm never on the river when he's on the river, so I don't get to know where he is and what he's doing. But I would love to know. It might be odds on the one or two of the spots would be where I probably fish anyway, but perhaps they aren't. I don't know.
I'm sure there's a lot to say for people who you would call a natural, and going to a place like Chew Valley, for instance, where you might only get a couple of cracks or one crack a year if you're lucky, compared to someone who might feel out of their comfort zone and get on the reservoir and try 50 different lures. Half of them are just brand new and they don't know how to use yet, and troll and cast and drift and do all these different things, trying to cover as many different scenarios as possible, where, say, a natural fisherman would just go, okay, this area looks pikey, I'm going to try something that works and I know how to do and I have confidence in, and I'd say that they'd get better results.
Well, Chew's a very strange situation. Let's just, while we're on that subject, just look at it very briefly. The first problem with Chew is to get to fish it, right? Because the demand is so great. The second problem is you're competing with... You can't troll. You can't troll, not on a petrol motor, no. You can troll on an electric motor. But I've tried all those things over the years, and lure fishing, and I don't think the biggest I've had off Chew on the lure is 27-14, so I've not had one of the really big fish. But the key thing with Chew is that you're competing with 20-odd other boats, all with hardened pike anglers, of which half will know the place far better than you do, right?
Sure, yep.
Half of them will know far better than you do when it's likely that the pike are going to move from one place to another, which is what angling pressure does on there. The other half will be as stupid as you are, but that's no consolation because you put 10 stupid boats on the waters, unlike Chew, 2 stupid boats will still have a very good day.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this season I haven't. As one of the stupid boats, I haven't actually had much of season. I mean, I did actually catch a 20 and a quarter and an 18 in about 10 minutes, but considering I had I think 9 days on the job, right?
All right.
That wasn't really much of a result. Whereas Kev Shaw and Gary Banks, they both had 30s. Gary had a 35. That was next boat to me. Another bloke that misweighed his fish, but we know it was 37, 38, that sort of weight.
Yep.
He was 100 yards from us, and it just went on and on and on and on. And leaves my boat partner Dave Moore and I scratching our heads, wondering, can we really be this useless? But that is what Chew does, I'm afraid.
Well, any reservoir or any river, any piece of water, you're going to have your on and your off days. But I think overall you're best going with your gut feeling instead of overthinking things, like you were saying.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we did have a plan. We knew where the fish would move to once they'd been pressurised out of where most of them were, right? And we kept trying that spot, and needless to say, they didn't arrive there. A week and a half later, after we'd finished, of course they arrived there. Right?
Ah, right.
Right. There's no consolation to me because I'd used up all my days.
You'll have to get them to read the script next time.
Well, I suppose it's the only thing that makes pike fishing interesting is the fact that it isn't pike on demand.
It's hard to go out and brain them every day. I don't think anyone's going to ever be able to, no matter how advanced the technology and the knowledge gets.
Yeah, I mean, I've written about this before, but one of my best friends, Duncan Pritchard, who is now Dr. Duncan Pritchard, but seems as Duncan's got a bit of a pointy nose, we call him Dr. Punch now, because we aren't very nice to each other, any of us. But his doctorate is in psychology, so he's very good at analysing things. But I can do this analysis myself, which is basically fishing is a form of gambling, right? Where the gambler should really go to see Gamblers Anonymous, because each time you go, particularly after you've had a period of not catching any, it is next time I'm going to catch one. Next time I'm going to catch a big one. And this goes on and on and on until eventually you do catch a big one. Yep. And then the whole process starts over and over again. It's just the same as the poor little grubby bloke in the grubby Macintosh and the fag in his mouth that staggers into Betfred's, right, and say, "Got to put this money on whippersnapper to win at the camp, mate," and invariably they don't win, and then they come back the next day, and so on and so on, and eventually they do win, and the win reinforces the desire to go through the whole sorry process again. And really, if you basically look at fishing in its nuts and bolts sort of way, that's what it's about. But if you are a romantic writer, then there is much more to it than that. And thank God that there is, otherwise it would be a pretty grim sort of thing that we do. So there is more to it than just that.
It always keeps you going back because the house always wins in the end.
Yeah. But, you see a nice sunrise and a nice sunset. And I like to... I appreciate what I see when I'm out there, but I would never, ever let anybody know that, right? Because, my favourite expression is when someone says, "Isn't that a lovely sunset?" And I just turn around and say in Marvin, the paranoid android voice, "It's rubbish." Are you familiar with The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
I've seen bits of it, seen bits of the movie anyway, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, you'd have to read the book and seen the BBC series and listen to the BBC radio series.
Right.
Otherwise, you're not an aficionado, and therefore you're not worthy of talking to about it. So, but basically...
I'm not even going to try.
Basically, it is... It's the ability to think that's a nice sunset, but you don't let it on to your mate. You just say, "It's awful." Yeah, which I like. I like that.
So what's your mate's name, the psychologist?
Dr. Duncan Pritchard.
What do you think he'd see going on in your head if he laid you down on his couch?
He wouldn't dare say anything to me. He's terrified of me. I've known him for since 1994. Work that out. That's 32 years. Fished with him on and off for 32 years. Seen him go through a divorce and then become happy with someone that I got on with. I didn't get on with the other one.
Oh, well, that's a win.
Yeah.
Righto, let's get back onto Pike, I guess. For this time of year, I know it's just been snowing up here anyway, but a lot of people seem to be struggling, well, especially the lure fishermen through the winter months. What advice would you give those guys at the moment to try and improve it?
Well, it can be done. You can catch on lures in the winter. I haven't had a successful winter trolling on the river campaign for a couple of years, but when it was working well about 3 years ago, I was catching trolling lures at 3.5 mile an hour at a water temperature of 4 degrees C.
Right.
And that included fish to 25-14.
Do you think maybe the last 2 seasons are after the big floods we had?
Well, I mean, the floods stop you getting on the river full stop.
Do they harm the recruitment of juvenile fish, do you think?
You have to appreciate that rivers like the Trent, for example, and all your Fenland rivers are canalised. Therefore, they do present problems for fish to stay in the river. But it's just mainly a case of if they don't keep swimming upstream, they're going to end up in the sea, aren't they? So most quite sensibly keep swimming.
For the average Joe out there without a boat who's walking the banks of the canal or his river or whatever, on these cold days, what would you be turning to? What would you be doing? How would you be retrieving your lures?
Well, I wouldn't be doing it on the bank. As you said, Tom, as far as advice is concerned from the average Joe, I'm completely useless because I wouldn't be doing it. There are people much more expert in dealing with those sort of situations, but there is no such thing as too cold unless it's frozen. So there's always a chance. I mean, the golden rule on small waters is if you have a hard frost, it's probably not going to produce much in the morning. It might produce something after dinner when, if it's a bright sunny day, the temperature just comes up a degree or two. If you want to go and catch something lure fishing or dead baiting or live baiting in extremely cold conditions, it is always a good idea to go to somewhere as big and deep as you can find, because they aren't affected in the same way by sudden temperature changes.
Yeah, okay, sure. So try and pick your days as well.
Well, you don't have the choice, do you? If you've got to fish on Saturday, you've got to fish on Saturday. But I mean, years ago, around where I live here, which is Gainsborough in Lincolnshire, I had it so sussed out. I had mild weather waters, cold weather waters, and I could move from one to the other, and my results were very good. That has become much more difficult to maintain in recent years, which is a pain, but. That's these things happen sometimes.
In regards to, say, retrieves and things, I always hear the same thing spouted over and over again that, well, for the lure fishermen anyway, that you should be fishing as slow as possible. Do you think that definitely helps?
The odd times I've had a few chucks on the river with lures, basically, if you're using a soft plastic like a replicant or any of the Daiwa soft plastics, you wind it in at the minimum speed that makes the tail work. And that's it. You can't go any slower than that because otherwise you're just pulling a piece of plastic that does nothing through the water. I mean, I was talking to someone in the spring who said, I sometimes use those lures that so-and-so used to make. I said, oh, you didn't. They're useless. The tail doesn't move on them, right? He says, but sometimes they want something that's so subtle that it hardly moves. I thought, slipping egg. I threw them all away. From my point of view, certainly lure fishing off the bank, I tend to pick up more than what I provide in information from other people. I watch what other people do.
Yeah, right. What sort of trends do you see coming through your magazine in regards to it?
I think the majority of people that go pike fishing in the UK, dead bait. There's no doubt about that. There are some people that dead bait that won't lure fish, got no confidence in lure fishing, can't lure fish, which is very, very, very foolish because there are some situations where you can't dead bait or live bait, and so therefore you can't fish that water.
How much do you actually get out fishing these days since you've done a hell of a lot in your lifetime? Are you more of a fair weather fisherman these days or just get out when you can?
I will go out on the river if it's bitterly cold and settled and the river's in good nick. If it's wet and windy, I will go to various still waters that I've got access to. I will travel a bit further afield and go fish odd other places. I'm trying to fish as locally as I can. I mean, I go to Ireland 4 or 5 times a year because I've set up quite a customer base for my dead baits in Ireland, and it in effect pays for the trip. You know, puts a bit of money in the bank at the same time. So, I mean, I'm very lucky in that the wife she's got a better job than me. She's bought a house in Ireland, so she's had it for about 8 years. So we have a base there where we can go, and it doesn't cost anything to live there. You don't have to pay anything.
Yeah,
the only snag is someone nicked our wrought iron gates 2 weeks ago. Never mind. I don't suppose anybody listening here will know where they are. If you do know, could you please contact me, please?
Right, we'll get on it. Have you got a photo of them? We'll put up a wanted ad.
Right, okay. Unfortunately, the one thing I didn't think of was taking a photograph of them. So, as you can imagine, it's a bit late now trying to take a photograph of them because they're not there anymore.
I hope your dog doesn't get out.
It's not my dog, I don't care.
Something I've noticed with guys like yourself who seem to have done a hell of a lot of fishing, I could probably compare you to a guy called Rex Hunt from Australia. I'm sure you've heard that name before.
I've heard the name, yeah.
He's done a lot like yourself in the fishing media, and he's been on telly and all sorts of stuff. But as he gets older and doesn't feel that he has to be a massive trophy fish hunter or anything anymore, these guys seem to go back to more of a stripped back sort of fishing. You know, they're not chasing the latest trends or the latest venue or anything like that. Do you find yourself leaning towards that sort of thing?
Not entirely. I can see where that's coming from. How many wet fish do you want to catch? I still enjoy going pike fishing. I still enjoy the challenge. I enjoy going zander fishing, which I find interesting. There are things that I don't get time to do that I would like to go trotting on the river to catch me live baits. I enjoy doing that. But I am constrained in that I can do all the fishing that I need to do, or should I say, want to do. But I am still constrained in that I obviously edit Pike and Predators magazine, which takes some time. I don't run the shop. The lady that you were talking to previously, Sue, she runs the shop. But I run the deadbait side of the business. I'm the only person that knows what we've got in the way of frozen fish, so they all have to ask me. It's all in my head. It's not stored on a computer. So if I drop dead, they'll be in a complete muddle. But so that's another job. I also run a carp fishery, Daiwa Manton, which is at Curtin Lindsay near Scunthorpe, a 33-acre carp lake, a 8-acre carp lake, and a soon-to-open 17-acre predator lake. And obviously, I have to do jobs up there that nobody else wants to do, like cutting tree branches down and filling potholes in roads. And I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
And I find that probably because I can't do that little bit extra that I'd like to do, that does me good, because I'm always wanting a little bit that I can't have, you know. So that's fine. I mean, I'm 63 and I could technically retire in 2 years. I honestly don't think I will, because I don't know what I would do with myself. Because if I go fishing all the time, I'll go mad. So you can see what's happened to Al. You know, he goes fishing all the time. He's gone mad. You know. Sorry, Al.
You must feel that the pressure's a bit less to catch trophy pike for the camera and stuff these days. You know, since you've done a lot, like having the pike record and writing God knows how many articles. Do you feel that you can kick back and enjoy it a bit more, or you just got your fingers in that many pies? You haven't had time to think about it.
With the amount of money that one spends on the fishing, one's got to earn it, unfortunately. And the fishing tackle industry is not a very profitable industry. Certainly, the opportunity to freelance write in magazines and papers has virtually dried up. There's very little of that about. Books, hardly worth the effort. The last book I produced didn't make any money. Simple as that. Whereas all the previous ones had made quite a lot of money. So the money's got to come from somewhere. So you've got to carry on working. If you could pare your fishing down to just going on your bike with a bucket on the handlebars 3 miles up the road on a bit of free fishing, I think you could live on the state pension and go fishing every day. But unfortunately, when a predator ticket at Chew is 450 quid just to get you 2 days bait fishing and your 8 days fly fishing, which we have used, from time to time. Another permit is 250. I mean, you've got to work to be able to do it. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to catch any pike, but I'm afraid that's essential. I would have liked to have done a bit more video/TV work. The problem came when the first 2 videos we ever did with Len Gerd, piking around and probably more piking around. I can't remember what it was called. But they worked because they were planned very, very well. I knew waters where we could catch a 20-pound pike to order, right? The trouble was the third one we went, which was Linear Fisheries, St John's Lake in Oxford. The bailiffs kindly baited the area up for us a week or 2 in advance. And really, it should have been a dead cert. We never had a run. But you see, that was a water I didn't know. And I expected it to respond favourably, but it didn't. And that was the third in the series of DVDs or videos. And we never actually did it. And we also did Martin Fownes of Anglers World Holidays filmed us fishing on the private stretch of the Cut-Off Channel in Norfolk. Oh. And 12 pound zander and 22-pound pike. Mick Brown came down for a day and he caught a few fish. And it's on VHS videotape, and we've never got round to doing anything with it. if I ever get the time, I think I should say to Martin, shall we make something of this now, because it'll be 20 years old soon.
Yeah, that's right. A little bit of nostalgia.
Yeah, well, I mean, old stuff that hasn't been used is very nice when it emerges, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Something no one's ever seen before. Everyone's seen all the reruns, haven't they? Maybe release it as a DVD with your magazine.
Oh, well, the magazine's not run by me, owned by me, so it's I'm always happy to work with my own magazine, but I hadn't quite thought of it like that, but who knows.
Well, how about we talk about Pike and Predators, since I'm sure that's how a lot of people know you. How many hours are you putting into each issue that comes out?
It takes me about 40 hours a month, right? So it's roughly one working week a month.
Yeah.
And I could make it easier for myself if I when somebody sends an article in, I sent it straight back to them and said, could you please use the spell checker on your word process, right? And can you not use capital letters for pike, carp, rudd, tench, bream, please, because they're not proper nouns. It just goes on and on. This just, I mean, I'm not grammatically perfect by a long way, but you do learn the basics when you're editing a magazine and what to look out for. And I mean, favourite thing of one writer is an ampersand. You know, the little and abbreviation, and we don't allow those. Right. You've got to write and. You know, so it means, you know, until I figure out how to use the word processor to change them all at once, which I'm sure you can do, I have to do it one at a time. So, and when it comes to foreign writers, their English is far better than my Dutch, German, or even Russian, because we've had a Russian contributor last month.
Yeah, that was a good one.
But their translations aren't always very good English, so sometimes you have to spend ages on those.
The guys from Yorkshire too, I'd imagine you'd have to do a bit of editing.
Well, I'm not going there. Half my customers are Yorkshire. But now the professional writers, the people that are very good at it, like Paul Garner, Dominic Garnett, it's virtually a free run when you get something from them, because they're good, they're professionals, and the photographs are good as well. A frequent problem we get with contributors is they'll send you something off their mobile phone that's 49 kilobytes, right? And Paddy, who does the production, I mean, I already know not to send him to him, because he'll send him straight back and says this isn't big enough for reproduction. And then I have to say, well, haven't you got the original image, right? And then with this back and forward trying to get hold of the proper thing. I mean, I send every contributor a guide to writers to tell them what to do and what not to do, but of course, not all of them can read and write. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean that. They obviously can. They obviously can read and write, otherwise they wouldn't have written to me. But it also there is a cycle of activity amongst writers for the magazine. They all seem to want to write in the winter when everybody's fishing, and come the summer, it all dries up, and then you have to resort to commissioning stuff off people, which if they're good at writing is easy because they'll write. But if for example you've got a chap who's got something to say, you know he's got something to say, and you can spend 3 years trying to get him to say it. You know, I mean, sometimes it works in the end. I mean, to make a magazine readable, it's got to have at least one or two really interesting articles in it per month. I mean, there'll be the stuff will range from really interesting to someone saying, "Oh, I don't want to know about fishing in Thailand," and things like that, which the majority of people probably don't. But some readers do want to read about fishing in Thailand, and so you just spend all your time trying to keep ahead in order to get the decent stuff.
Yeah. With the rise of obviously social media and YouTube and stuff, I know that magazine, newspaper sales are down, even people watching free-to-air TV. Now, Pike and Predators has an online edition. Is there anything that you can do to try and mitigate people drifting over to social media and stuff? Do you think people will still be picking up the magazine in 10 years' time?
Well, I hope so. I mean, my golden rule is I never post any of the fish that I catch on any form of social media at all, right? If you want to see anything, if you're that interested, and probably half of the people in the world are, but making the assumption that someone's interested, I would never post anything on Facebook or any forums or anything like that about what I've caught. If anybody wants to know what I'm up to, then the magazine's where you read it.
Yeah, sure.
And the problem is that a lot of people are posting stuff which may not have any value elsewhere, but it might do, and they're just throwing it away for nothing. And I hate to sound so mercenary about this, but fishing is my living, and that is where my money comes from. And therefore, like most people, I have to try and protect it as best I can, and I do it that way.
Yeah, I'm sure recreational fishing at the best of times would be hard to make a living out of. But for any of the young blokes out there who are keen to get in and have their try at writing or getting into fishing media, what's the best advice that you'd give them?
Well, I would always go back to the best advice I got when I started. Two people gave me words of advice. You won't have heard of this person, but he was the editor of Angling magazine, which was the magazine for coarse game and sea anglers in the 1970s. And his name was Brian Harris. And I went to one of the angling shows that they had in Chelsea in those days in London. And I asked him, Mr. Harris, in order to get published in your magazine, what do I need? And he said, good photographs. And that was the truest thing anybody said, because words can be improved by an editor, right?
Yep.
Photographs, if the crap, you can't do anything.
Yeah, sure.
Simple as that, And the other thing was the late Barry Rickards, who was by that stage was obviously a successful writer in his own right. I asked him any advice for what I should do now I'm getting a bit of income out of this. He said, get a good account.
Good tax accountant as well.
Yeah, and he was right, because there is no reason why you should not quite legitimately, anything that you earn, you have the expense that you incur to write that material, which is all your photographic expenses, a lot of your travel expenses. You put them against what you earn, and you come out of it without paying a silly amount of tax for what you've earned. It's two basic good bits of advice. But the youngsters today are in a slightly different situation, because access into magazines is virtually impossible. Pike and Predators will always accept something written by a youngster if it's got something to say and it's got good photographs, but no youngsters ever send anything in. But the media of YouTube and blogging and things like that, it's obvious from what you see these days that some daft little girl of 18 is earning loads of money because she has got so many followers that cosmetics companies and fashion companies are willing to advertise on her site.
Yeah, that's right.
And that could be the way forward for some youngsters, but they do have to have something to interest anglers, and presumably they have to catch some fish, which probably isn't as easy as some girl saying that I'm using this soap and it's done wonders for my skin, and why don't you try it? It's probably not quite the same.
Well, when you say taking submissions for Pike and Predators, well, obviously photographs are such a large part of it. What advice would you give for someone to take a good photo instead of just the grip and grin and snap away?
You don't have to be a professional photographer to take a decent photograph. I'm not a professional photographer, and my failure rate of photographs is about 50%. So I clearly am not a great photographer. But the one thing you've got with digital photography is that you're not constrained by the price of film and developing, and always take far more pictures than you think you need. Not of a fish that you've just caught, because you don't want to kill it, right? But, if you're thinking of writing, you photograph everything that moves around you virtually, because there'll always be a way of weaving it into an article. Like the sun came out and the fish started to feed. Well, you'll have a picture perhaps of the sun, not directly into the sun at midday, but you know what I mean. You'll have a scene setting picture, right? That'll go with it, and then
Context.
you will have. We found that smelt were a better bait than eels on this day, and they're laid out on your unhooky mat. Will be an eel section with 2 hooks in it, and a smelt with 2 hooks in it. You do that, and you just work on that basis. And if your mate's just hooked a pike, you go and photograph him playing it and landing it. And the golden rule of all is try and keep the horizon horizontal in the background. Because the worst thing that you see in a picture is when it appears that the person is standing on a 45-degree slope, right? Which he isn't, obviously, because as far as I know, the Earth, though it isn't flat, it appears to be flat, and horizons appear to be where they should be, i.e. parallel with the ground, basically, in most cases. Unless you found somewhere on this world where the basic laws of gravity and physics no longer apply. So do that, and then if you want to write something, have a dictionary handy, because the spell checker isn't always going to get you out of difficulty. And I doubt it's. I don't know what kids do these days. They've probably never seen a dictionary, because it's all done on the internet, isn't it? But if you can look things up there, obviously.
That's a good start, I think. Plenty of advice there if someone wants to have a crack at writing, especially if you take plenty of photos of like your mate boiling the kettle, or when you broke down, or got a flat tyre on the way to your fishing spot, and then when you're old and buggered and retired, you can look back on them. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, how about a different subject now? You're saying you've been to Ireland quite a bit. What about other international fishing spots? Anywhere else you hold dear to your heart? Or?
The place that I've been to that I'd like to go back, and I'd like to go even further north, is the far north of Canada. I've been to the Yukon, I've been to Northwest Territories, and I've also been reasonably high up, but not as high up in Manitoba as I would have liked to have gone. But the problem is money. It is an expensive exercise. The other problem is you need to find someone who's going to assist you. And I remember looking on the internet at places to go one year, and I found a place advertising, join us for a search for the world record pike, Fairbanks, Alaska. Now, Fairbanks, Alaska, on the river there, yes, there is big pike potential on that system, but you only have to look at the size of Alaska to realise what you're dealing with there. And anyway, there was this picture of this huge pike being held by this bloke, right? And I thought, that pike looks familiar. And I looked it up in my Mammoth Pike book and found it was dear old Nigel Williams' 41-pound pike from Bluebell Lake with someone's head stuck on.
Oh, what?
Now, I sent that to Angling Times in double quick time, and I think they pursued the story, and the website page disappeared very quickly.
You are kidding.
That's what you're up against, right? You have to, if you're going to spend £5,000 for a week's fishing, right, and a flight, you need to be sure that you're not going to someone that's not genuine. And they do exist, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
They exist anywhere in the world. So I have a contact in the north of Canada who is absolutely genuine. But unfortunately, his wife ran off with another man, and I think the divorce is contesting the part ownership of his beautiful boat at the moment.
Not his boat.
I don't know where that's going.
Right. What does it take to get over there?
It's 8 hours, I think, to Edmonton, and then it's another hour and a bit to Yellowknife.
Is there anywhere that the thought of it still gives you goosebumps? Any species or countries you'd want to visit and fish?
It's always the far north, because that's where the unexploited fishing is, and I would love to do more in places that have hardly seen a human footprint.
Yeah, right. Do they have the muskie over there as well?
They do, but it's roughly, if you say, 100 miles north of Toronto, and they basically disappear after that.
Yeah, okay. Have you tangled with one of those before?
I've had one about 10 or 11 pound, but that was tied in with a family holiday. Just as I've had one day sturgeon fishing on the Fraser River and had them up to 200
right.
pound. I enjoyed every minute of it. Don't ever want to do it again. It's just it was nice to do it, and we went salmon trolling in the Pacific, right? And we caught a few salmon, and that was quite amusing. I would never want to go again. There are certain things that interest me, but they don't interest me to divert me from pike fishing, because and zander, which is my second interest, which I like doing.
Yeah, right. So you travel halfway across the world and catch the same sort of fish?
They are the same species, but they can look awfully different, and that also intrigues me, why they're so different to look at sometimes.
It's an amazing species. I was blown away when I first got over here. I know fishermen always think the grass is greener and I'd love to travel to another country and catch this tropical species, but I was blown away when I got to the UK of how good the recreational fishing is. How does it compare to when you were a young bloke, or where do you think it's going in the future?
Because the pike aren't killed anymore, there are more big pike out there. Unfortunately, and I can tell this because I sell dead baits, and I know what we sell in the way of dead baits, and I know what my competitors sell in the way of dead baits. It has gone from not being a viable business to being supporting 5 or 6 different businesses in the country. So obviously there's an awful lot of competition out there.
Yeah, okay.
But I'd like to go to Russia or something like that. But in a way, I mean, it's amazing I'm still here, actually, because my dad was a carpenter, and he applied for the £5 scheme to emigrate to Australia.
Right.
We were set to go to Brisbane, right? That's where we were going to go, in Queensland, I believe. And my mum had a nervous breakdown, a postnatal depression, that's right, after I was born. Don't anybody laugh about my mum had postnatal depression because I'd been born, because it wasn't directly linked to me being me. But we were turned down. They didn't want the Fickling family. So...
Oh, because she was crook.
Yeah, so we never went.
But they took a bunch of convicts instead.
Well, yeah, earlier they took an awful lot of British convicts, which may be why your cricket team is such an evil bunch of characters. Allegedly. Allegedly,
that's right. Have you ever thought about heading over there for a fish?
No. My wife says her and Rosemary going to New Zealand for three weeks. They said, "Do you want to come?" I said, "No."
To knock back fishing in New Zealand.
I can cope with 10 hours on an aeroplane. After that, I go gaga.
Yeah, I think if you went to Australia, you'd probably melt as well. I was talking to my folks over Christmas, and they were in South Australia. It was 45 degrees.
If you could get me there for 5 days, right? If you could find a TARDIS, right, and get me there for 5 days, I'd love to go and have a quick look, right? But
too much like hard work.
Well, there's so many other places to go as well, and it's probably cold places offer me more attraction than warm places. I'm allergic to the sun. I come out in prickly heat, so whenever I go anywhere hot, I have to cover my sleeves, and I have to wear a big floppy hat to stop my ears going all horrible. So I get on better in cooler places.
Yeah, blood's too thick.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Spain pike fishing in May and June, and it's fantastic. I enjoyed every minute of it. But you could retreat to a beautiful old-fashioned brick, heavy stone-walled house, which is amazingly cool inside.
I was surprised how good the fishing is in the UK when I got over here. What do you think the future holds in regards to, say, fish numbers and the quality?
Well, basically, when you're a predator or angler and you want the better fish, you tend to be very mobile, and you'll move from water to water. And there's some places like the Norfolk Broads where I spent a lot of time in the 80s. I may never ever go back there. It's not because I don't want to. It's just that there's so many other things going on, right? Things get better, things get worse, and basically you move around to suit. Locally, my fishing is very good. Locally, it's not hugely impressive, but it's good enough to keep me happy. I mean, I've had a 34-pound 6-ounce pike 10 miles from my house, which I never envisaged happening. Previous to that, the nearest I'd had a 30-pounder was 50 miles away.
Yeah.
But gradually, I'm catching fish approaching that size nearer and nearer to home, which is very nice because my idea of bliss is not having to get up too early in the morning and not having to drive for 4 hours, which there's still quite a lot of that involved.
Yeah, gentleman's hours.
Yeah, well, I mean, the happy days when you could set out at 4 o'clock in the morning and there'd be nobody else on the road are gone because everybody's out on the roads at 4 o'clock in the morning now, except the police. You never see the police at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Do you think having caught a 30 so close to home and having the fishing improved, do you think that's more to do with maybe the way industry is regulated these days and how people are more environmentally conscious? Do you think that makes a big contribution to it?
Oh yeah. I mean, a civilized society such as should I say, an advanced society such as the one that you would accept exists in this country, as opposed to, though they're very civilized and they're very advanced in China, they haven't got a grip on their pollution problem, right? Whereas we have got a fairly good grip on it, and so we should have. We don't need to pollute in the way that we've done 100 years ago. So that helps, obviously, but there are still problems. Enrichment of waters is a constant problem. Saline incursions on any river that runs into the sea is now getting to be more and more of a problem. So there are factors that take the pike fishing away from us, but elsewhere, usually something else turns up, fortunately.
Well, I think about it, in some places where it seems to go backwards, you said you've spent quite a bit of time in Ireland. What are your views on the history of the gill netting over there? How legitimate do you think it is, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm just actually at the moment, not as I speak, but minutes before we started, going through the consultation responses that were asked for from people to do with predator control on the Great Western Locks, and it's virtually the same old story. The people that live there, it's hard ingrained into their psyche that pike should be destroyed at all costs, right? Yeah. And there's obviously no educating or changing those people. The problem is that the science that's been presented to justify this can, on an analysis, be interpreted in a totally different way. It doesn't stand up to a scientific analysis. And the problem is the Irish government going to take its own Inland Fisheries Trust to one side and say, look, you have destroyed the reputation of Ireland as one of the best countries to go pike fishing in the world, right? Yeah. You've dragged it down to the level of metropolitan Paris, which I shouldn't think is very good pike fishing at the moment. There is good pike fishing in Ireland, and Alistair shows that there clearly is, because he catches pike. But the fish that we want to catch, the ones that we dream of, the ones that are so rare, are the mammoth pike, which are the fish over 35, of which Alistair hasn't had one. And the reason he hasn't had one is because there's so few of them there that he'd have to probably get in a league with the devil to catch one now. But yet, I managed to catch one 38 and a half. It took 18 years of going to Ireland.
Is that from Mars?
Yeah, that took 18 years of going to Ireland, admittedly, but I caught one. I think if you asked me to catch one now and give me 18 years, I'd say, on your bike, mate. I'm not bothering with that challenge. But the problem is that the parties are very, very a long way apart. The trout anglers hate everything we stand for. Yeah. We don't hate the trout anglers, but we hate what the Inland Fisheries are doing to the pike, gill netting them, and we'd like it stopped. And we'd like the trout fishing to be improved. All the money that goes into killing pike to go into improving the trout fishing. And I mean, it is important that trout fishing must be maintained, not just because we want them so pike can eat it, because looking at the stomach content data, it's quite clear that they're not eating trout to the exclusion of other things. There's all the other fish, the roach and the bream, and that they eat as well. And but all that money spent on killing pike should go into making sure that the areas where the trout spawn are in A1 condition. They should regulate what you can catch and keep. They have these big fishing matches on there where they weigh everything in, right? I mean, if you expect the water to sustain the battering it gets sometimes, right, without any scientific research into whether they're taking too many or not. It's terrible. I mean, some of the science is so poor. But there you go. I mean, the island belongs to the Irish, and though us English can have something to say, it is down to the Irish to solve their own problem. And for the first time since 1992-3, someone has actually gone to town on fighting against it, and it is purely in the hands of the Irish themselves now, which is far more politically correct as far as I can see, because nobody can accuse the English interfering, which of course the Irish would love to do, because old memories are still there. Not that I think the average Irishman doesn't like the English and the average Englishman doesn't like the Irish, because we do. You know, it's a wonderful place to go for a holiday. But pike fishing could be better.
Do you think it's a generational thing as well? Obviously,
yes.
It seems to be the old guard.
Yes, but the trouble is the old guard are teaching the youngsters the bad ways as well. Yeah. If when youngsters are exposed to a broader base of opinions, and then they make their own minds up, there is a good chance that they will walk away from the dark side. You know.
Yeah, well, this is one thing where social media can do wonders. Obviously, well, I've seen the video of I forget the fella's name.
Kenny Sloan.
Yeah, that's the one, Kenny Sloan, that he put up of him catching in the act, the pike getting gill netted and, you know, dragged through the mud and chucked in the back of vehicles for no apparent reason. And, you know, the spread of that sort of thing can only, open up the discussion at the very least. And I've tried to look at it from an unbiased perspective. Like, I love my pike, but I sort of sat down as I was researching it. I was hoping to do an episode on it. And I thought, right, if I was a trout fisherman, what could actually be done? And I was researching one of the locks, and I think the bag limit for trout for a day was something around 8 or 12 per day. I thought, surely you can just at least try halving the trout bag limit on that lock and then see how the trout population looks instead of knocking all the pike on the head.
Well, the salmon anglers, this has nothing to do with pike, but the salmon anglers on many rivers now are exercising catch and release, because there is no need to take a salmon to eat, because though the salmon you buy in a supermarket is somewhat inferior to the salmon wild caught salmon, it is still salmon, and if you cook it right, it's very difficult to tell the difference. So, catch and release is becoming important in some parts of game fishing. And honestly, if they want to carry on enjoying the brown trout fishing that they enjoy now, they may have to consider this, particularly if the pike are eating mainly roach and perch. And obviously they do eat trout and they do eat salmon as well, but those roach and perch compete with the trout. So, there's a balance there somewhere. It's just that the old guard, you'll never convince them. Whenever I see them out on Loch Corrib, but you can always tell who they are, because when they catch a pike, you hear the characteristic sound of a large piece of wood descending on the hapless skull of the pike. Yeah. And you don't say anything because there's one of you and there's three of them. And
I don't think you're about to change their mind anyway, are you?
No, it's pointless. So you keep your mouth shut and move on.
Well, I appreciate you sticking your neck out and letting me know your full thoughts on that anyway, Nev. That's good. Well, so I'm up here in Fife in Scotland, and I'm loving getting out there and exploring around the lochs and stuff. Have you had much to do with fishing up here?
I've fished in Scotland quite regularly because I also worked there for about 8 weeks on Loch Fitty near Dunfermline. I've had fish to 26 from Lomond. I've had fish to 26-13 from Menteith. I've potted about here and there. But I am actually going to fish Menteith in one of the PAC events in March. But it's the first time I've been fishing in Scotland for some time. The problem is that my main boat, he says, haha, my main boat. Yeah, very good, yeah, all right. I haven't got a decent car. It's based in Ireland, so the boat that I've got here, I wouldn't go out on Loch Lomond on it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, right.
So what I do is I basically look at Scotland and ignore it, even though there is some wonderful pike fishing up there. There's still places to explore, and so on and so on and so on. But there are still places to explore on my local river. Yeah. So what do? Do I just spend my entire life on the road and sleeping in the back of the van when I get there?
Like you made up?
Or yeah, well, I do the same because I don't want to talk to somebody when I come back from a day's fishing anyway. So being on your own suits me fine in that situation. But no, I can't see me going to Scotland. I've had invitations from people to go and have 2 or 3 days up there, and I appreciate the invitation. But a friend of mine's fishing one water up there, and he's just had a 23. And I think that's the only place in Scotland I might just ever be tempted to want to go. But the reason is because they are the most fabulous-looking fish, and I like fabulous-looking pike. Right. It's something nice to catch. Yeah.
Tell me about what you do with the PAC. I know you do a few speaking engagements and things. How does that all work?
Well, you get asked to do them, so you do them. I don't. I've just done one in Essex, and it took me 5 hours to get back because setting out at 10:30. Normally, I can drive straight back because it's a 3.5 hour run back. Yep. But I started to see things in front of my eyes as I was driving along, and as soon as you start doing that, you got to stop, right? So I stopped and I closed my eyes and I nodded off for an hour and a half, and when I woke up, I was ready to go again. But I'm not. I've done Glasgow this year. I've done Henley on Walton on Thames. Next year, I'm not going to do any of the long distance ones simply because I think I'm getting past. Doing these journeys, I can't afford to stop over when I get there because I'm wasting my life. Stay in a hotel and then get up and drive down the next day. That's not my idea of entertainment. I want to get there and do it and then come home again. But 8-hour journeys in a day, I'm not going to do them anymore.
So, someone who's looking to get along to one of them, what do you find yourself covering when you're speaking?
Well, the current talk is in search of the ultimate pike water. So it basically covers the places that I've been that were pretty good, the places that I'd like to go that might be pretty good, and the places that I don't even know about that might be pretty good. Yeah.
You know what I'd like to hear about? Your worst ever trip. Since you've done a few miles in your fishing, what's one that's just gone absolutely balls up and you couldn't do anything right?
Fallen out of a boat 3 times, but luckily each time into 1.5 foot of water. But trust me, you get just as wet in 1.5 foot of water as you do in 10 foot of water. No, I think the worst experiences are usually. I'm a great believer in people that say that they want their mates to catch fish and that they enjoy seeing other people catch fish. I believe they honestly and sincerely believe what they say. If I'm in a boat or next to someone, right, I want to catch the fish. Now, it doesn't mean that I hate the mates for catching them, but I wish they wouldn't. And I've had some days like that on Chew when I had a day with Wayne Adcock, and he said, "Do you want to alternate rods around the boat?" I said, "No, you fish yours where you want to fish them," so he did. And Wayne had a 33, a 29, and a 27 before I even got a run, right?
Oh, no.
And when I eventually got a 15-pounder, all the boats around let out a sarcastic cheer, you know. And that, to me, wasn't a terrible day's fishing, but it was a hard, bitterly difficult thing to live through, right? Because just one of those fish, and I'd have been made up. But it didn't happen. And then it's happened to me with Steve Rowley about 6-7 years ago, lure fishing. He caught nearly all of them, and I didn't. But I did it back to him, bait fishing 2 or 3 years ago, and it felt good. It felt good watching his face as I went in a 33 and then a 27, and then the next day to rub salt into the wound at 28. Good, but now my mate Dave Moore's been doing it to me on Chew, and he's been catching most of them, which is terrible because Dave doesn't know where he is on Chew half the time. Yeah. I hope he doesn't listen to this. Yeah, but no. I mean, my first trip to Loch Lomond in a three-wheeler van, right? We'd spent months preparing it. We had everything organised. Me and my mate, we set off in the three-wheeler van from King's Inn, where we lived. We got as far as Newark when the radiator boiled over, and as far as we got. And that was it. That was our first Loch Lomond trip.
Didn't even get close.
So there you go. So we had to go all the way back again.
With your travels over to Alaska and things, nature-wise or people-wise, what's the weirdest thing you reckon you've seen out on the water?
Out on the water? Well, we drove past one lake in Canada, and there was Bart Simpson's head sticking out of it. So what was the purpose of that? I still don't understand what that was about. That seems pretty strange to me, but not really interesting. By the way, the bad news is this phone has got 10% of its battery remaining.
All right, I'll skip through a few and we'll get towards the end. Why don't you tell us what you got planned for the future? Any books planned or any changes with your businesses or your upcoming Predator Lake? How about you tell us about that?
We'll carry on editing the magazine as long as the owners will have me doing it, which I hope will be for a bit longer, until at least I get my pension. The shop, well, we're going to carry on basically until we get so old and crinkly that people will be so horrified they come into the shop when they see 150-year-old people serving. That they won't want to come in. Well, angling will probably have changed completely by then. It'll all involve fishing in greenhouses or something like that. The Predator Lake will be aimed at predators. And that's it, really. There's not much more you can say about that.
Yeah, right. How do you go about setting that up? I guess you got to establish a bait fish presence before you can even think about putting the big fish in, do you?
Yeah, well, I mean, that happens naturally because they've got to be connected to the other lakes. So small fish will move in there, and they'll flourish, and then they will move a few of the pike and things like that from the other lakes, and then off they go.
And when does that start up?
April the 1st.
Righto. Whereabouts can they find that?
It'll be emailing the tattle shop at btconnect.com.
Very good. And you're on Facebook as well, mate?
I am allegedly on Facebook. I don't know how to use it very well. As I said, I take one person asked me a question. It took me 6 months to find out I'd had a message from him in order to respond to him. you got to realise though I'm not thick. I work best when my son shows me how to do it.
So the best way to keep up with your fishing's through the magazine?
Yeah. And I mean, a message will always get through to me the magazine, but the actual tackle shop email is where you send your articles for the magazine as well. So that covers several different things.
Yeah, good on you.
Covers the diamonds, and we haven't got to the sophisticated stage of having separate emails for everything. Yeah.
Well, you can leave us with maybe some advice to a young angler or even a young Neville. What would you do differently, or something you'd like to convey to the young blokes and ladies out there fishing?
That is quite simple, because I'm asked that all the time. If you are good at your studies at school, get the best out of that you can, right? Because you'll only get that chance once, right? And if you get a decent job, you will have the scope to do the things that other people can do. If you get a crap job, you might find out that you haven't got the money to do the things you'd like to do. So by all means, be madly keen on fishing, particularly pike fishing, but don't neglect the thing that's going to ensure you have a future for your pike fishing. There's plenty of time to do the pike fishing. Same with carp fishing, plenty of time to do the carp fishing.
Well, I think that's pretty sound advice, mate. And on that note, I'll let you go. Thanks so much for coming on. It's been great. I'm sure there's plenty of tidbits in there that people will make use of. And hopefully do it again sometime.
Okay, thank you very much, Dean.
Good on you, mate. Bye.
Bye.
I'm still here, but...
Yeah, I know. I did think you would be.
That's the end of that. I better let you go, but that was fantastic, mate. I had an absolute ball.
Well, you've got to have a laugh about it, but we've got the daft bugger Lee Benson's just come in the shop. The person who put all his fishing tackle, everything he owns, every possession in his van before he goes fishing in the morning. And then he went to his van in the morning and found someone else is now in the possession of all those things that he puts into his van in order to go fishing in the morning. The only problem is we don't know who it is.
Yeah, I think they pinched a couple of my rods once as well too.
Yeah, unfortunately, but the pike angling community has been very good, and everybody's had a whip round for him, right?
Yeah, I saw that on your page. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and basically he should be helped to get back fishing, but. If he tries that stunt again, right, he's going to be kicked so far down the road his ass won't know whether it's going first or his head first. We're not recording this, by the way. Don't worry, he's looking worried, but we're not recording it.
Oh, this is going straight on the episode.
All right, okay.
Well, there you go, everyone. That's episode 4 of the Predator Podcast in the can. I hope you all enjoyed it, wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Thanks for all the great support and all the positive feedback on Facebook. If you feel like getting in touch with us, if you've got a great fishing story to tell yourself, even if you've got a story of the worst fishing day of your life, I'd like to hear it. And you just might end up on the show. So be sure to like the Facebook page, head on over to YouTube and subscribe to that. I'm going to be putting out all sorts of videos that are exclusive to the Predator Podcast and some fancy little fishing tips that you might never have seen before. We're also on Instagram if you're into that sort of crap. And apart from that, that's it. Thanks once again to Neville Fickling, and thanks everyone for listening. I'll see you next episode. Catch you later.
Going down a hard road. Don't know where I've been. Going down a hard road. Don't know where I've been.
Growing up, I needed a guide like a blind veteran's dog. Cause I was going nowhere, like a child's letters to God. The life's road was hard, I was never so lost that I looked for an answer and I met as a box. I never did pop pills or cocktails, just rock tails. Kids with skills still got a rasp for cops still. They'd have me in the back of the paddy, down the lockup. Smack me, pat me down for a baggie. Mom's a rocker and bail me out if I you're out once again next weekend. Found me out drunk again. And I never will forgive myself for putting you through all that hell. I went from high school dropout to factory labourer, slave to the clock until 4. Went from sleeping on the floor to being out on tour now. No stopping me, I finished with the bang like a Cobain's biography.
Going down a hard road.
Down the high road.
Don't know where I've been.
And don't know where to go, it's like
Going down a hard road.
down the high road.
Don't know where I've been.
I spent my youth like life was cheap. Only change that I wanted was enough to buy a drink. Was on a path to nowhere. The harder the road, the more broken baggage we carry, the larger the load. The school drop bag, I'm knocked out. Chased by the cops out. Got clout. Dumped by my girlfriend and locked out. Been broken being, even choked at being a dope MC. But never lost hope and dreaming. We used to thrash, push the car, silver engine and fail. If I never had bail, maybe I'll be dead or in jail. Oh man, I got no one else to blame. I'll thank my family and music for keeping me sane. But that's the breaks, right? Started working late nights, never seeing daylight, getting paid like a slave might. And I've done too many years to miss this. All my misses to have to tell my son he nearly never existed.
Going down a hard road.
Down the high road.
Don't know where I've been.
And don't know where to go, it's like
Going down a hard road.
down the high road.
Don't know where I've been.
DJ to break, come on and break it down like
And I speak what I feel in the booth, in the spirit of truth. Cause all these kids that I meet, man, they mirror my youth. And I could have gone the wrong way,
The easy option.
but I chose to go the long way.
streets is watching, so
So keep a look out, be ballers, keep your hook up, pull a page, rip my book out, and pull out your finger, put your foot out. And keep a look out for what we put out, the brand new flavor for your cookout.